the Pacific heading eastbound on a course towards Los Angeles. So all the air raid alarms went off about 11 o'clock at night, and from 11 o'clock to like 2 in the morning, there was constant anti-aircraft fire and searchlights, everything else going on. And it was not just an insignificant incident. There were at least 6 fatalities, a couple of car crashes, heart attacks, and I think one guy got hit by some falling debris. And there was a lot of damage to Los Angeles, but it seemed like it was all due to falling ordnance, because they put up thousands of rounds of anti-aircraft shells. They said there was a big circular, a globe that was like slowly floating over the town, and they were hitting it with everything they had, and yet reportedly nothing happened. The next day, the Army said the alarm was real. But then the Secretary of War, Stimson, came out and said, no folks, nothing there, nothing happened, just war jitters. And of course then we went on, the Doolittle raid took place, we got into World War II, war news was everywhere, and the Los Angeles air raid kind of like dropped out of the history books. Nobody thought anything more about that. But we do have his photograph that was published on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. And now with the advent, and of course that doesn't seem to show you much, except they obviously were centering their searchlights on something there in the center of the searchlights. And now with computer technology, we can reverse the whole thing, and what's in there but a little saucer-shaped object. And we also now have this memo to Chief of Staff George Marshall by Franklin Roosevelt, who says, as indicated in my letter and memorandum to you regarding the air raid over Los Angeles, I have learned by Army G2 that Rear Admiral Anderson of Naval Intelligence has informed the War Department of a naval recovery of an unidentified airplane off the coast of California, unlike having any bearing on conventional explanation. Further, it's been revealed that the Army Air Corps also recovered a similar object in the San Bernardino Mountains east of Los Angeles, which cannot be identified as conventional aircraft, blah, blah, blah. So apparently they had their own crash recovery. They did recover some objects after the Los Angeles air raid that had no explanation as to conventional aircraft. Now what's really interesting is that, well, here's another memorandum for the Chief of the Army where they're talking about Dr. Vannevar Bush, who by the way has been identified as one of the founders of the infamous MJ-12 or Majestic 12 group, which has been in charge of UFO secrecy. And they said this is, FDR says, I disagree with the argument that such information should be shared with our ally, the Soviet Union. So even though this is 1942, you can already see the Cold War start to take place. But what's really fascinating is that in the memorandum talking about recovery of unidentified aircraft, Chief of Staff Marshall says, I have further ordered a thorough investigation of all War Department files regarding unconventional aerial phenomena reported since 1897, the very year of the Aurora spaceship crash. So all the way back and all the way up to 1942, certain national leaders knew that there was something flying in our skies, and it wasn't us, and it wasn't the Soviet Union, and it wasn't the Nazis. And now, of course, today we have a new, undisclosed, still classified suborbital craft that you haven't heard much about because it's still classified, but Jane's Defense Weekly and some of the aviation aerospace publications have been talking about this. And what are they naming it? The Aurora. Hello. So, did the Aurora spaceship crash happen, or didn't it? The debunkers have said, well, it was just a hoax newspaper story. But as I showed you, and as you can see for yourself, you want to get a copy, It's just one of 16 stories, and they're all talking about it. And it all fits into the great airship mystery of 1896-97, and which was in all the papers all across the United States until the latter part of April 1897, when the Dallas News reports that it crashed in Aurora, Texas. And after that, no more stories. Did it go away? Or was it just imagination? Or did it crash in Aurora? Okay, so you can't, the story that it was just a hoax story planted doesn't hold up, because all of these stories are talking about this, and other papers of the area, of the era, were talking about it. So the next argument is, well, Judge Proctor didn't even have a windmill. All right? Technically, I think maybe they were correct, because the old folks I talked to and some of the material I was able to research says, no, Judge Proctor did not have a windmill. This was just a misstatement in the newspaper article. What he had was a windlass. And a windlass is a wooden derrick, just like a windmill, but it doesn't have a windmill. It doesn't have the blades on top of it. It's just a wooden tower that he used for the sump to operate his pump. So there was a tower there, but they've said, no, he didn't have a windmill, didn't have a tower. Well, last summer when they came and moved the little brick building, what they find? The footings for the tower. So yes, there was a tower. The next argument is that, well, it didn't happen anyway, so there's no grave there. You know, we don't know what that little headstone was, but it was probably just a prank, and there's no grave there. Well, last summer they used ground-penetrating radar, and they found that, yes, there is a grave there, a short little grave. So that's out of the way. Now, the key piece of evidence is that what they found, we found pieces of metal, one that they said was puzzling, but it did appear to be aluminum, and since there was no way to tell when it might have gone in the ground, it didn't prove anything one way or another. What they found last summer was little blobs of what appeared to be molten aluminum buried 6 inches into the ground and embedded in nearby trees and rocks. And the science says the only way this can happen is through a terrific explosion. And since Brawley Oates bought the property in 1945, and there hadn't been any tremendous explosion since then, I take this as very convincing evidence that the Aurora spaceship crash story was indeed real, and it did happen. And it's been part of the ongoing cover-up by the federal government of the United States to keep us from knowing the reality of UFOs and the presence of non-human intelligence. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, okay. Number one, you go back to 1947 and the infamous Roswell crash, which we could spend a whole session talking about that, but I'll just leave it this. Roswell's pretty simple. It's strictly a question of belief. If you want to, you can believe the government, which has changed its story 4 times and has little or nothing to support it, stating that nothing unusual happened at Roswell. Or you can believe the more than 600 people that are now on the public record who said, I was there and it was crash discs and there were alien bodies and they took them, I took them to Roswell, I guarded the hangar, I flew them to Wright-Patterson, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So, who do you want to believe? It's up to you. And I'm not going to try to tell you what to believe. I'm just giving you the facts. But the main thing is that the people who actually run this country, and I'm not talking about the president, it should be painfully obvious to everybody by now the president has little or no say-so in what happens in this country. By the way, just for y'all's information, last month at the Munich Security Conference, President Obama's new National Security Advisor, General James L. Jones, got up to make some remarks, and he first said, I want to thank you for honoring Dr. Henry Kissinger, which they had done the previous day, which I wonder about since Kissinger can no longer go into certain countries since there's arrest warrants out for him for war crimes. But he says, congratulations on you, he says, and I must tell you that as the President's new National Security Advisor, I take my daily orders from Dr. Kissinger. I don't remember voting for Henry Kissinger, did any of you? So where's the change? There's not any. The same people are still in charge, and the embargo on truthful UFO information is still in effect. And I'll just leave you with this. Y'all are free to make up your own minds, believe anything you want to believe, but if you totally dismiss the issue of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrials, then you will never be able to truthfully figure out what's actually happening in this world, because you are throwing out a big piece of the puzzle. I thank you all for listening to me, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can.